So this is the Triumph Bobber Chrome. It's an absolutely stunning bike, and as you heard, it sounds beautiful. One of the things I found with this is that you're going to go nowhere silently. Of course, the exhaust sounds loud and beautiful and just stunning. And that's another thing, it just looks absolutely gorgeous. When you're riding around on this, the amount of looks I've got by just rolling past, cruising along. One time a rider even turned around to come and find me and tell me that he loves the Triumph Bobber Chrome. And I was like, yeah, it's stunning, isn't it? And that's the thing, the attention you get from this bike, you're just gonna not be able to go anywhere silently at all. You're always gonna draw attention to yourself. And in a way, that's a good thing on this bike because it is beautiful. There's a few variations to this Bobber Chrome. Of course, as I said, this is the Chrome edition. This one starts at £13,795. I've spec'd it up on the Triumph configurator online and I got it to around £14,229. And that's because it's got the bar end mirrors and heated grips, which are accessory options. If you go for the standard edition Bobber, which I wouldn't really say there's anything standard about it, that starts at £12,995. It's powered by the 1200cc 270-degree crank liquid cooled parallel twin, and this is across the 1200 Bonneville range, just the same that you'll find in the Speed and Scrambler 1200 as well, for example. This motor is so nice to work with. It's got 106 Newton meters of torque from around about 4,000 revs. I will also just throw in, we're working with a bit of a squeak in the studio. The roof is a little bit noisy, so apologies if there's any ASMR qualities to this video. We're going to try and edit it out, but it sounds all right now. In terms of power, it's got 76.9 brake horsepower, which isn't a huge amount, and it does mean that it can be restricted down for an A2 license, but it feels beautiful on the road. Honestly, the way that this bike handles and has that power utilization through the ride-by-wire throttle, you just cruise around happily, or if you really start throwing it around, the engine is just there for you. When you're working through the gears, it's got 6 gears. You have pops and bangs on the shifts downwards, and you can rev match all the way down from 6th to 2nd. It's a really addictive feeling on this one particularly. So if you're going from 6th and you're cruising at sort of 70 miles an hour, the revs are sort of high, like around 3,000 revs-ish. And you've got a 12-litre tank on this one. So in terms of the fuel economy, you're probably going to get around about 100 miles. It's funny because the 900s, in terms of the Scrambler and the Speed Twin, got around about the same fuel economy. And this 12-litre tank is an addition from the previous Bobber, which had a 9-litre tank. So fair play to Triumph for that, because the 9-litre tank would have just been pitiful in my eyes. You wouldn't have been able to go, say, 80 miles without worrying about filling up. So fair play, they put a 12-litre tank on and they've upped that to around about, they say 130 miles, but we found it to be more 100-ish miles. So on this engine as well, you've got a little bit more electronic trickery to help you out. So you've got traction control, which can be switched on and off, and you've got 2 ride modes. So you've got road, which is just the full throttle action, and then you've got rain mode as well, which sort of dulls the throttle a little bit, but it doesn't feel like you're really struggling when you're riding around in rain mode. We've ridden around in some pretty questionable weather in this, and it's been really nice to just jump on, fire it up, put it in rain mode and roll away. Still has that addictive power and that addictive Triumph torque, but it's just a little bit more dulled. Flick it into road mode and I headed out to the beach near Dunwich on this one. And that weekend was just beautiful on this. The roads out there are just stunning, and you've got loads of twisty corners and go through some quiet, sleepy villages, open up the throttle, and it's just beautiful. Funnily enough, the same roads that we took for the Honda CB750 Hornet review, so check that one out if you haven't seen it already. But this bike just ate up those roads. As I say, the torque was there at all times, and you just roll on the power, flick through the gears, downshift a little bit, and you just go in for it. One of the reasons that it's so addictive is just the handling quality on this bike. I mean, when you look at it, of course, a single bobber seat in the rear that's just in another planet. The suspension just handles so nicely. Even when you put on the brakes, there's not really too much frontwards dive. It just feels really nice and planted. The ground clearance isn't huge. I don't know the exact figure, but when you start really hammering on in the corners, the pegs do scrape a little bit, and sometimes that can be unnerving. Sometimes you just get used to it and you know where the sort of lean angle limit is. But when you do touch the pegs, you know that you're going for it, and the bike doesn't really get unsettled. In terms of wet weight, it's around about 251 kilograms, and it's spread through the bike so nicely. It feels really stable when you're riding it, and it's one of the things that I really enjoyed about this bike. When I first jumped on the Bobber Chrome, I didn't think it would necessarily handle too well. I thought it doesn't have any right to be a cruiser bobber that handles this well. After my first ride, I was actually blown away. And me and Felix both rode this and thought, this is just stunning. It's really one of the nicest bikes that we've ridden here at Bike Matters, and that's saying quite a lot because we've done quite a few reviews this year. So let's talk about the brakes a little bit as well. So up front, you've now got a twin disc setup. On previous bobbers, it was a single disc, but Triumph have then addressed what some reviewers and some owners were calling some sort of weak front brake feel by putting 2 discs on there with Brembos, 2 pistons on each Brembo, and they're actually mounted. The brake feel on this is really nice, especially up front. You can really just rely on the front brake to just do all of the work. The rear brake does really well as well. It's all right, Roofy. It's all right. You're okay. You're safe. So at the rear, you've got a 255mm disc with a Nissin caliper, so there's Brembo at front, Nissin at the rear. And you've got ABS as well. When you really push on the rear, the ABS sort of kicks in, but I didn't really feel it kick in too much at all. The rear does get a little bit squirmy when you really push on. But overall, the braking power is bang on. And again, the bike weighing what it does and sort of styled how it does, the braking power is really, really good. In terms of suspension as well, you've got a 47mm Showa fork up front, and you've got a monoshock under the bobber seat at the rear. You can upgrade to a Fox RSU for the monoshock at the rear. I don't really think it needs it, to be fair. You haven't got too much in the way of travel with this suspension. Hey, fuck you, man. Fuck you, man. You haven't got too much in the way of travel with this suspension at the front or at the rear. But compared to the Sportster S, which probably has a similar amount of travel, it feels like this bobber can handle sort of lumps and bumps in the road a lot better. The suspension is really quite surprising. I've seen some other bobber models with upside down forks and even clip-on bars on the TFC special they did in 2020. But this suspension was really surprising. And again, it just contributes to that overall road feel and handling. Because once you get this on the open road and the twisties, it just eats it up and the suspension is bang on. You still know it's a cruiser, you still know it's a bobber, and you feel like it's a bobber, especially with that single seat that sort of hugs you, which I'll mention is 690 to 700mm if you adjust it. But the suspension, no complaints here whatsoever. So in terms of the frame as well, we'll just quickly mention it's a twin cradle steel frame. Again, handles so nicely and it feels really nice and sort of taut. It just all feels like a compact and solid unit. Funnily enough as well, the bike feels quite compact even though it's quite long. It's a really bizarre feeling. I mean, the 16-inch wheels front and rear with Avon Cobras on there are quite wide, but it just all feels like they've tuned it in nicely. Just a quick mention on the seat as well, 690 to 700mm as I say, but as it comes and as it is right now, the seat for us was bang on. It's quite a nice seat in terms of the way it's sat here. When you're sat in the seat, this rear bit really cushions you and sort of holds you in. So when you're really twisting on, it doesn't feel like you're going to be flying off into the abyss. A really nice little seat. Of course, naturally, there is no pillion option and you can't buy a twin seat for this. If you're looking for a twin seat bike, maybe the Speedmaster, sort of similar vibe, but the bobber seat on this, I really like it. I will also throw in, there's a few different options for seats. There's a statement seat, which is £455. And I think it's brown and leather, looks really nice, but this seat as it is, really nice. So moving up front to the sort of dash and the rider amenities and the switchgear. Overall, it feels really nice and well built. The dash is an analog and LCD combination. So you've got your LCD inlay screen and that's got your fuel gauge, you've got your odometer, trip A, trip B, the time, and a little screen for rev. So you flick through the information button and you can select which one you want to look at. Rider mode button is a dedicated button, which is quite nice. I did find that the indicator is good, but the horn is right underneath it. So there's a few times that when you're moving your thumb down from the indicator position, you might toot the horn. And there's a few times that people would look at me and think, why are you tooting at me? There's also cruise control on this one, which is a really nice touch. And Triumph have added on the heated grips on this one. So you've got a low and a high setting, and they did come in really nicely. As I say, that's an additional, I think it's £255. And as I say, with the bar end mirrors and the heated grips, that adds up to £14,229. And as I mentioned on price, I don't think that's too bad at all. For what you're getting on this bike in terms of the style, the comfort, the character on the road, I think it all adds up to a really, really nice bike. Quick mention as well, 12-litre tank. You can see on there the chrome. We did find that the line of the chrome doesn't quite sync up. So when you look at it from a certain angle, and once you've seen it, it kind of ruins the vibe a little bit. The black portion is slightly to the left. Now, I don't know whether that's going to be just a sort of hand-built, not defect, but sort of defect. It would annoy me if this was my personal bike, because every single time I look at it now, I see some of the chrome a little bit off. It may be that this is a press bike and Triumph just thought, well, the chrome is a little bit off on this one, so the press can have it. But in any case, I think the tank itself looks really, really nice. As standard with Triumph as well, when you start looking around the bike, there's no wires hanging around. It looks really nice and clean. One of the things I do like is just the little touches. So at the back of the seat, you've got a little Triumph logo. You've got these little gold bits here and there, and of course these can be swapped out when you go into the configurator, as is standard with basically all manufacturers, but especially Triumph. You can go through and you can customize this to the nines, and you can spend a lot of money in the Triumph shop just putting little bits and pieces on to make it your own. That's a great thing because everyone loves a bit of customization, but it's also a very dangerous thing for your wallet because it's going to be coming out the other side of the dealership maybe £16,000 or something. But this one, as it comes, is £14,229, and as I said, that's a very fair price. When this Triumph Bobber first hit the market, I think it was instantly popular. Not only because of the style, but when people jumped on it, it handles so nicely. So one of the things about this, the 2023 Bobber Chrome, is that it's gone through quite a few iterations. And of course, Triumph have always had that instantly popular torque and for the ride feel. But it feels like Triumph really ironed out everything that was causing a concern in terms of going from a 9-litre tank to a 12-litre tank. The brakes, they've always been sort of front-sided, but now it's a twin-sided. 16-inch wheels as well. You know, some of the other ones, the TFC Custom, had clip-on bars and a 19-inch front, but then they've gone for 16 on these ones. I think overall, it's just become the perfect bobber. Now, I'll say that having not ridden the previous editions, but if I was to take off a front disc and downsize the tank to 9 litres, I think it would be sort of lacking in those departments. So when I get to the good and bad, you'll see what I mean. But overall, I think Triumph have nailed this, and it's been a very, very fun bike to ride. So we're getting towards the end here, and I've got 3 good points to make. I wonder if you can guess what they are. The 1200cc engine is bang on this. Absolutely loved it. It'd be interesting to see how this handles in the speed and scrambler formats as well. But in this bobber variation, the power, torque, and just the engine overall, beautiful. With that, the handling on this is another point. I honestly am so surprised about how well this bike handles. Yeah, the pegs scrape a little bit when you really push on, but overall, this thing will just be there at all times in terms of braking power, the suspension. It is a bit firm, but it's a bobber, and the suspension does a great job. Overall, handling is impeccable. And lastly, third point, the style. I think it's absolutely stunning. And as I say, we've been stopped in the street, been stopped by bikers on the road, even people just walking by. I've gone to the shop and came back out and there's been people just like drooling over it. Everywhere you go, this thing just turns heads. And I think that is a massive positive point for the bobber, especially the Bobber Chrome. Bad points, I will say it's quite difficult to fault this bike, but there is a few little things that sort of need addressing in a way. First up is the chrome. I mean, it may not be like this on every single Chrome edition bike, but on this one in particular, and because it's right in front of us, the way that it's aligned is a little bit off. Slight bit annoying, doesn't change the character of the bike, but once you see it, you can't not see it. But it depends on if you've got really bad fixation on a problem like that. If it's really gonna ruin the bike for you. If this was to turn up in my drive, I'd be a bit annoyed, but I'd probably just get on with it. Other people, so if this was to arrive on my drive like this, I'd probably just get on with it, but other people may find it too much, and you just go talk to your Triumph dealer and I'm sure that they'd happily sort it out for you. Another thing that I feel quite mean for bringing up, it's got a 12-litre tank, but the range is still like 100 miles. It would be nice if it had a little bit of a bigger tank, but then the weight would be more, but it's not a 9-litre tank. If it had a 9-litre tank, I really would say that's a problem. But in any case, you just have to fill up a little bit more, not too much of an issue. Did I really have a third point? I don't think so. I don't think there's a third point to really say about this bike, to be honest with you. I've really racked my brains trying to think of something that I don't like about it as a third negative, but it's just been so difficult because this bike has been really, really good fun to ride, and I would highly recommend anyone try it out. It's the style, it's the ride, just everything about it is bang on. But this has been the Triumph Bobber Chrome. As I say, and as has been very clear throughout the video, really enjoyed it. It's been a bang on bike, looks stunning. Happy days. In any case, thanks so much for watching. Leave a comment down below if you agree on my points about how good this bike is, if you've ridden one yourself or even if you own one. Is it all that I think it is? Have I missed something? Let us know in the comments. Like the video as well, subscribe, stay up to date. We've got loads more on the way. We've got other videos, the Triumph Scrambler 900, Speed Twin, Tiger Sport 660. We've had quite a few Triumphs in, the squeak returns. And naturally, because it's the bobber, we've also ridden the Harley Davidson Sportster S at Bike Matters. So if you want to check out that video, give that a watch and see what we thought about it as well.
Turn it on again. Turn it on.
I'll turn it on again. Yes, sir.
Turn it on again.
And I'll leave you with the soundtrack of the bobber.